And in this video we continue in this series looking at the articles based on the Rettendon Range Rover murders and the people involved. These articles about the discovery of the three in the Range Rover and the farmers that discovered them. 3 ecstasy barons blasted to death from the 8th of the 12th 95. Link to Lear gang. 3 dealers in the killer drug ecstasy were found shot dead in a bloody gangland execution yesterday. The rival gang is suspected of selling the drug to tragic Leah Betts, who died after taking the tablet on her 18th birthday. The bodies of Craig Rolfe, 26, Tony Tucker, 38 and Patrick Tate, a 37-year-old armed robber, were found in a Range Rover in a snow-covered Essex country lane. They were lured to what they thought was a drug rendezvous and cold-bloodedly murdered. Each was killed by a single shotgun blast at the back of the head. A farmer and his pal stumbled on the F-Reg Range Rover at 8 AM yesterday near the village of Rettendon, 4 miles from Leah's home in Lashenden. Tucker was a close friend of boxing champion Nigel Benn and acted as his minder at big fights. Last night the WBC super middleweight champion said, "I've known him since I came out of the army. It's very tragic." A police source said the victims, known criminals, had been involved in a major turf feud over drugs. The insider added, "We've also heard reports of people who set out to avenge Leah's death." Detective Superintendent Ivan Dibley, leading the murder hunt, said, "It was a horrific sight. We are not ruling out the possibility of a gangland ambush. I am satisfied that the weapon used was a shotgun. Police believe the killer may have forced the driver of the Range Rover into a remote workhouse lane at gunpoint. Once they were away from the main road, the 3 were clinically executed. The murder may have been the work of a lone assassin with a pump-action shotgun. But detectives say there could have been 2 or more hitmen." Rival drug dealers were being quizzed last night. The victims all came from South Essex. Tate lived in Basildon and Rolfe at Grays. Tucker's home was in Fobbing. They used nightclubs and bars as their ecstasy outlets, mainly in Basildon, Chelmsford and Southwood and Ferris. Mr. Dibley said, "All 3 were known to us, and they were not on the bottom rung of the criminal ladder." Muscleman Tate, 37, staged a daring escape from a magistrate's court in December 1988. The 18-stone villain was charged with armed robbery after he held up a Happy Eater restaurant in Leyden, Essex, and stole £800. 2 policemen and a WPC who tried to stop him fleeing the court in Bellericay, Essex, were injured. Heavy tattooed Tate, who also faced the charge of possessing cocaine, leapt on a 1000cc motorbike driven by a pal and escaped. Retired policeman's daughter Leah died 3 weeks ago after taking ecstasy at her birthday party. She collapsed and was rushed to hospital in a coma where she spent 6 days without regaining consciousness. A total of 23 people have been arrested in connection with ecstasy dealing since her death. But the police are still hunting the gang who supplied the killer tablet. The police source said, "We have been inundated with calls about suppliers and pushers. Leah's death has sparked a lot of emotion." And from the same date from the Mirror, Hitman swapped sides. 3 drug dealers found shot yesterday were savagely executed by Hitman who changed sides. Craig Rolfe and Patrick Tate went out with Tony Tucker to meet the contract killer and fix the death of a rival they believe had grasped on them. But in an amazing twist, this assassin had already been paid an estimated $20,000 by their target to blow them away. As they sat in their 7-year-old Range Rover parked down an isolated farm track at Rettendon, Essex, the gunman stealthily approached through the snow with a pump-action sawn-off shotgun, nearly blasting their heads off. The men were only identified by police fingerprint files. A CID source said yesterday, "It was a brilliantly executed assassination. The victims were lured to the lane to discuss having someone else hit, but the tables were turned on them. They drove into an ambush and were shot to pieces." A source at Essex Police added, "We had excellent information that Rolfe and Tate had been trying to hire a killer to rob out a rival drug dealer, but it seems the intended victim got his shot in first." Tucker was a pal and minder of Dark Destroyer boxing hero Nigel Benn. Tate had a conviction for armed robbery. Rolfe also had a robbery conviction. They died as a direct result of the police war on drug dealers following the tragic death of ecstasy girl Leah Betts, 18, last month. Their intended victim pushed ecstasy in Rackell's nightclub at Basildon, where Leah's fatal tablet is believed to have been bought. The bodies were discovered at breakfast time yesterday by farmer Peter Fearbold, 44, and farm worker Ken Jiggins, 47. The pair stumbled on a death wagon in tree-lined Workhouse Lane near Mr. Fearbold's farm on the main A130 Chelmsford Basildon Road as they set out to feed pheasants. The metallic blue Range Rover, registration F424NPE, was parked tied up against a 5-bar gate and hidden from the road by trees. Ken said, "The car was parked in front of the gate and we needed to get through. I got out and tapped on the window to ask the driver to move on. Looking in the window, it seemed there was 2 people fast asleep inside. But when I looked closer, I could see both had been shot. I called Peter over. He peered in the back window and said, 'There's another one here.' The driver was upright with his head bowed onto his chest. The front passenger was in the same position, but the man in the back was slumped sideways. There was blood around his chin, which spilled onto his chest. There was no sign of a weapon. Last night, murder police battled against cruel weather to save desperately needed clues in the snow. They feared they would lose possible tyre and footprints if a fall set in. Others called in a low loader to take the Range Rover away, with a tarpaulin hiding the bloody bodies inside. Locals, mainly farm workers used to the sound of shotgun fire, were stunned by the horror. Margaret Lane, who lives nearby, "It's scary. We're very isolated here." Farmer Ron Fax, whose Retterton Hall farm is close to the murder scene, said, "We're used to shooting here. It's not unusual to hear guns at night because people go hunting rabbits and foxes, but I didn't hear any noise last night." Boxing hero Nigel Benn was last night floored by the news of his minder Tony Tucker's death. A spokesman for Ben said the WBC super middleweight champ was devastated. "Tony was part of all Nigel's big fight nights and become firm friends with Nigel," he said. "He used to team up with us on the day of the fight and lead Nigel into the ring as a sort of standard bearer. Nigel got on so well with him, he even invited Tony over to his training camp in Tenerife for a week," he added. Also from the same date, from The Sun, "They looked so peaceful. Then I saw they'd all been shot." One of the men who found the murdered drug barons told last night how he thought they were having a nap, until he saw blood running from their mouths. Bricklayer Ken Jiggins and farmer Peter Fearbold came across the massacre at 8 AM on a lonely country track, blanketed with snow. The victim's metallic blue Range Rover was blocking the path of their Land Rover, so Ken climbed out and tapped on its window to ask the occupants to move. But there was no response. Ken, 44, said, "They looked so peaceful we thought they were asleep, but they were dead. When I looked inside, I saw the driver slumped to one side with blood running from his nose and mouth and his eyes closed. The passenger was sitting bolt upright with blood all over his face and chest. I knew right away they were dead and that they'd been shot. It was a sight that will live with me for the rest of my days." I ran back to tell Peter and got my mobile phone to call the police as Peter went to look inside the car. As I was speaking, he ran up to me and said, "There's a third one in the back." We were surprised and shocked. It's not something you would expect to find on your way to work in the morning. Ken and Peter, who runs the 130-acre White House farm close to the death scene near Retterton, Essex, were on the way to feed their pheasants when they found the Range Rover. It was parked in front of a padlocked gate leading to a fishing lake rented out by anglers by the farmer. Peter, 47, said, "They all looked so peaceful inside the Range Rover. There was no sign of a struggle at all. I would have thought they would have had some sort of warning as to what was to come. So I cannot understand why they all sat there as if they were asleep. Neither Ken or Peter saw any footprints leading from the vehicle in the snow." The farmer, who breeds turkeys, called the remote track a well-known spot for the local criminal fraternity. 6 years ago, a hijacked cigarette lorry was taken there. Its driver was tied up while 2 raiders made off with the truck's contents, worth tens of thousands of pounds. Several safes have been taken to the track to be smashed open, and stolen cars have been dumped and set alight. But it is also used as a lover's lane by courting couples. Police set up an incident room at White House Farm. Detective Chief Superintendent Ivan Dibley, who was leading the inquiry, said, "As far as murder is concerned, it doesn't come much more serious than this." He confirmed that one of the Range Rover's rear passenger windows was shattered in the shotgun attack. Forensic experts spent the whole of yesterday combing the track and surrounding undergrowth for clues. A helicopter scanned nearby fields. At 2:30 PM, the Range Rover was covered with a tarpaulin and loaded onto a police lorry, with the body still inside. Scientists and detectives were keen to examine the vehicle and its contents exactly as it was found. Later, the corpses were due to be taken to Broomfield Hospital in Chelmsford for post-mortem examinations by a Home Office pathologist. The dead men had not been tied up or restrained, and they were not even wearing their seatbelts when they were found in casual working clothes. Blood and debris caused by the blast was confined to the inside of the Range Rover. Mr. Dibley said, "Whoever has killed these 3 people is clearly a very dangerous man. We would appeal to anyone with any information to come forward as soon as possible." People living near the track were stunned by the massacre. They heard nothing and most learned of the killings through radio and TV reports. Doreen Wiseman, 68, whose cottage overlooks the lane, said, It is shocking that this has happened on my doorstep and I didn't hear a sound. Neighbour Margaret Lane said, "It's isolated here and we're very frightened by this. I shall be making sure I have my dogs close by me tonight." Ron Fax, who lives at nearby Retherden Hall, said few locals would have raised an eyebrow even if they heard the blasts. He added, "We're all into guns around here. We are shooting people. It would not be that unusual to hear guns at night because lots of people go hunting rabbits and foxes." The ownership of the Range Rover was shrouded in mystery last night. It was sold by an Essex garage just 2 weeks ago, but the boss of the showroom at Eastern Garage Group, Miss Stanford LaHope, said, "I can't tell you who we sold it to. I understand 2 men are in custody, and it could turn out to be awkward if I say any more." Last night, police indicated that there had been 2 arrests, but neither of the people in custody were suspected of carrying out the massacre. The garage chief refused to identify himself or say how much the Range Rover was sold for. Its previous owner was pet shop boss Graham Herson of Stanford LaHope. He added last night, "I sold it in a part exchange deal to the garage and it stood on a forecourt for a couple of weeks before being sold. I don't know who the new owner is, but it sends a shiver down my spine when I think about it. What has happened?"